This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
Pretty much, if you haven't been here before, we're going to describe how it works. Before we get started, I'd like to do some brief introductions with Nitin and me. And I'm Bob, and I'm a volunteer on the PMI New Jersey Board of Directors. I'm the Director of Agile Learning. And in my current role where I work, I need to make this announcement to get ethics approval. And basically anything that I share are my personal views, and they do not reflect that of the Federal Reserve Bank in New York or the governors, or actually the PMI New Jersey board. So pretty much these are all my own personal views. And as you can see, I do have the alphabet soup of Agile certifications, which I find really fun because it's been a learning journey for me. And now I'd like to have Nitin introduce himself.
Sure, thank you, Bob. So like Bob, I've also got the alphabet soup, and we've presented on certifications in the past in several events. I have worked with a multitude of teams, all kinds of teams, those starting off to those who've been experimenting, to those hyper-productive, including those that have just tanked onshore, offshore, hybrid models as well. And together we are two acronyms, Bob and Nitin, and we believe in one philosophy and that this works.
All right, well, I'm going to now share my screen, which is the Trello board. And so Nitin, I guess we'll look at the topic, and you're going to describe lean coffee.
Sure. So a lot of us have experienced this, but for those who aren't as familiar or new, Kanban is a flow-based system. It's a very visual thing with swim lanes that we're seeing. So if I could describe a few things going left to right, you have some instructions, there are things that you want to do, things that are in progress, and things that might hit a roadblock or as an impediment of sorts. And then things that we've completed reach a done state. There's one a little beyond for aha moments that we might want to share. So for example, right now, what's happening? We have a few people who do not have access to this Trello board, and to request access, they're going to put their emails in the chat. So that's why there's a card over there. What's also happening is if Bob could just click on the describe lean coffee under the to-do and drag it one over to the right, we will see that the lean coffee element is being described as well. This is the simplicity of the tool and how quickly things can flow. And because we do not have any set agendas or topics all the time, we can certainly open this up to the audience and say, hey, what would you like to talk about today? Are you facing something in work? Did you read an article? Is there something from last time? And if you were to click on the plus, add a card, we can see a growing list under the to-do or discuss. So we'll start with that, and there are a few proposed things as well. Once we get a good amount of cards, we can also click on them and hit a thumbs up button to vote. So let's take about a minute or two and see if you'd like to discuss a topic of sorts. And again, I will monitor the chat for just another moment or two. If you have trouble, you can even put it in the Zoom chat. We can try to capture the card or the topic that way.
It looks like everybody likes your instructions.
So Kathy, like the instructions? Okay.
I'm moving him to the to-do discussion.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm just going to add Valerie to this as well.
And it looks like some people are voting already.
That's great.
And as a reminder, to vote on an item, you would click on it and then scroll down on the item until you see the word vote, and then click on this, and it will put your vote in. So if there was already one vote on it, after you vote, there would be two.
If you were to be facilitating this live in a room with actual people, you could get a little creative and give people some stickies, some stickers, do dot voting. But in a virtual world that we're in right now, Trello allows us for something like this.
So what's dot voting, Nitin?
So dot voting is somewhat thing where people either have circular stickers they can add on. They're given a certain set. Let's say everyone gets 5 stickers. They can choose to add one or all of them to a card or spread them in any range that they want. Hey, I like this topic. Let me add 2 stickers to this. I really want to talk about this. The other 3, 1 each. Or hey, maybe this one. I really want to put 3 here to give it more weight.
So if you really want something, you could put all 5 on it.
That's right.
And then what happens after people vote?
Well, the ones that have the heaviest weight or of most interest, we just move the cards up top. And similar to Scrum, we get to what is of most value. And we want to talk about those before we get to the other topics.
So it's sort of like what I'm doing now. I'm moving the items up on the list.
That's right. Now, a question in the chat. If you have never signed up for Trello, it will ask you to do so. It is free, so please go ahead and do so.
So while people are voting, we'll let people keep on voting. And see what we end up with here. And also, while we're doing this, as John alluded to, we have an upcoming class by Michael James for CSM CLB. If you are not certified, CSM stands for Certified Scrum Master. It's probably one of the most popular certifications that anybody recruiting for people that are Agilists, that's being looked for. In this class, Michael does this virtually, and it's really, it's normally a lot more expensive, but because it's virtual, we're able to offer for under $1,000. And there's going to be a special code for ADG participants that we're going to give at the end for a decent discount, but something that you'd actually notice.
Please just go over the vote, how to vote again.
Sure. Like say I like this particular item, but I would click on it,
Mhm.
and then you scroll down until you see this
Okay,
word
thank
vote.
you. I didn't go far enough. Okay,
Three up from the bottom.
okay, thank you.
If I designed this, I'd put it on the top, but nobody asked me. And that's pretty much what nobody voted on this, but I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. The class is going to be Monday through Friday in the afternoons. It's only 4 hours a day because a lot of people, we've gotten feedback where a lot of people get Zoom fatigue, by being on a meeting all day. So basically 5 half days in the afternoon, and you will come out of it and able to actually take the CSM test. And if you actually go to class and pay attention, you will pass easily. And then at the end of the class, you could be a CSM. And also there's a CLB certification that comes along with it, which is a form of scaling. That stands for Certified Less Basics. So Linton, should we get started?
Yes, and very quickly, if there is a time lag, if you're not seeing things move as quickly as Bob is moving about, give it a few seconds or just hit the refresh on your browser. And let's see what we have way up top by terms of votes.
It looks like
And we'll
we have 5
continue
votes on
on.
these two. They're tied.
All right, Bob, you be the tiebreaker then. Which
Well,
one do you want to
this
bring
one's sitting
forward?
on top. We can talk about this one. What Kanban metrics can Scrum teams use?
That's a great topic.
I think you recently you got certified in Kanban, didn't you?
Yes, it did. So for those of us familiar with Scrum, we are very accustomed to getting velocities or burn ups or burn downs as charts. But what do Scrum teams do, or what could they supplement with Kanban? Or how about Kanban teams that don't really work in a 2-week or 4-week cycle? There are a few things that come to mind. You have the WIP limits, work in progress. You have throughput, which is just a count of items. And you have cycle time. So these are a few things that jump out at me. Work in progress is simple. You know, there's only so much you can do, and you can put that in a swim lane to get some sort of indication or a flag. So if we start talking about a multitude of topics all together, it's going to be a mishmash and a mess, and we lose focus. Same thing with a team. There's only so much you can do. Cycle time is given a certain junction when you start on something and it reaches an end state. What is the average time that you have spent or elapsed? Now, some people might say, hey, look, you put instructions and you have to do, in progress, blocked, done. So where should I calculate a cycle time? Is it from the instructions to done, or is it the to do and done, or from like in progress to done? And it's really up to you. You can have a multitude of definitions for cycle times as long as you clearly lay them out. So a lot of teams go from the in progress to done. If it's sitting in your backlog or your burner for a long time, some organizations or teams don't really care for that, or they can tweak and get other metrics around that. But that's how you get your cycle time. Your throughput is just a count. It's just how much have you completed given a certain time period. And a lot of teams that struggle with velocity have it easier with throughput because you can say, hey, once this thing has reached our definition of done, it's been accepted, it's in the done state. That's what we can say we have completed in its entirety. So you'd be surprised. A lot of Scrum teams can still supplement what they have with these Kanban metrics. So Bob, I've been blabbering a lot. Anything you'd like to add or things you've seen? So you want to open it up to others?
Sure, I think we can do that. But what I'd like to add is, as you noticed, it's a pull system. So it really, and also Kanban is an agile framework, as you've probably seen, in previous presentations with Nitin and I. So it enables a team to be agile, and by doing that, it makes their work very visible and very transparent. And the team members will actually pull the work in. Management will not be assigning things, the team will be pulling it if you do Kanban correctly. And so what I'd like to do is open it up for anybody else that has any comments. All right, Nitin, I think there's no other comments. So would be okay for everyone if we close this?
Agreed. This is what Bob is doing, is just simply dragging over. And we're saying, hey, our throughput went from 1 to 2. That's just the count of items. So what's next, Bob?
Sure. And as you notice, I left this one here in case somebody has a problem accessing the board. So we're probably not going to say this is done until the meeting's over. All right. So the next one with the highest number of votes, let me just do quickly a check here. Oh, I like that. Less first safe, but nobody voted on it. Okay. Key metrics to track program across multiple work streams.
This is very broad. I'm thinking of Scrum teams. I'm thinking of Kanban teams. I'm thinking of a combination. What have you seen, Rob? Or what would you recommend? I'll let you go first.
Well, the first, in my experience, working with agile teams over the years, the first thing management usually wants to do is like if the team is following Scrum, they'll grab the team's velocity, right? And they'll say, okay, this team is maybe completing 50 points a sprint. And then there may be multiple teams in the organization, and another team might be doing 80, another team might be doing 100, another might be doing 20. And so management would come to me and say, hey, this team that's doing 100, they're working a lot harder. They're getting a lot more done than the team that's doing 50. And grabbing on that one particular thing sets them in motion doom, because what ends up happening is the team that's only doing 50, they learn that management's watching their metrics. So guess what? The next time they estimate a story that might have been 5 points, all of a sudden becomes 13. A story that was 13 points, all of a sudden will become 20. So guess what? That 50-point team will be doing 120, 130 points. So that is why you never share, you never compare velocity across different teams, because it basically it leads to that, and which is really not helpful. Some things that would be helpful to look at is, well, this is also dangerous because a lot of times management might want to look at how many items did the team volunteer for, when they did sprint planning, what did they commit to, and how many of those items that they committed to, how many did they deliver? And so management would actually grab that metric and say, okay, this team volunteered for 20, but only completed 10, all right? And this other team volunteered for 30 and only completed 25. So guess what will happen when they do that? The next time when it comes to volunteering, the team that volunteered for 20 and only did 10, they're going to volunteer maybe for 12 because they don't want to be looked upon as not meeting that metric. So those are things that you have to be really careful about. And what key you have to look at is what business value is being delivered, and that's basically through feedback from the product owners, from feedback through the stakeholders. Like, is this team delivering value at the end of the sprint, and what is that value? And that can actually be shown during the sprint review event, where team members will see what the team delivered and what business value was looked at. So Nitin, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
That's great, Bob. So to supplement some of what you said, and I agree with everything, particularly with the velocity, you have to be a little careful because teams do estimate differently. We can still use some Kanban metrics as well, throughput, cycle time, because if you think about it, a team doing production support where they might have ad hoc requests, different severity of tickets and so on, might work at a faster pace or seem to churn out things much quicker rather than, let's say, a team that's working in a 2-week cycle with that more of a buffer, right? You can certainly get a lot of numerical, tangible items. If you want to look at the human side as well, there's a happiness metric, team morale, see how they're doing that way, have some sort of measurements on engineering practices and what that could look like. Because as you start scaling and growing, you're going to need a few more engineering practices as well. So those are just a few of my thoughts as well to supplement what you said. Should we open it up for others if they want to chime in?
Yes, please do.
All righty. So you can unmute if you have anything else to say or support. And if not, we'll go to the other cord.
I put
All
a
right,
couple of
so
things in chat.
Yep, Larry, let's take a look. Plan versus actual business value by team. Could help calibrate across teams to increase consistency. Yep, that's great. Other metrics do demos take place, retrospectives, innovate in depth cycles in PI planning. Yep. When you get to some sort of team evolutions or maturity, are you having your daily scrums or huddles? Are you having planning, reviews? And with that reviews, you have the demos. All good stuff there, Larry.
So can we call this one done? All right, I've been watching the votes and I've been moving cards around based on, if it has a higher vote, I've been moving it up higher on the list. So you can still vote as we're discussing, and you could still add items too. The next one is suggestions for managing cross time zone agile teams with only a few hours of overlap. If you don't mind, I could take a first pass at that one.
Sure, go ahead, Bob.
All right, so in previous assignments, I've worked with teams that were located in Poland, in Chennai, India, in Pune, India, and the US. And it's harder, because basically you're only, living on the East Coast, your only real time to talk to the other teams is in the morning in the US. And so what I tried to do is have early meetings with the teams in the morning, and at least we would catch some of that overlap and have those communications and handoffs. I'll give you an example where we were doing work with a team in Pune, and it really worked out well because our team would develop and then move things into our test environment. And then the people in Pune would be developing as well and move things into the test environment because we were following CI/CD. And so then what happened is we scheduled a meeting every day at 9 a.m. Eastern time, which was, getting close to the end of the Pune workday. And during this meeting, the people in Pune would give us feedback because they had a chance to actually test the system, test the changes that we made overnight. So in essence, they were not waiting to the end of the sprint. They were seeing changes every day because of this. And so, that's the way we had it work. And, the people in India, had to adjust their schedules somewhat, but it wasn't to a point where it was really unreasonable. So it wasn't really too late for the people, because then by the time 10 o'clock came, everything was done. People could go back to their lives. So that's what we did. Did you have any ideas on that, Nitin?
This is a tough one, and it's not going away anywhere soon, right? This really gets down to how much pain an organization is willing to take on, or how much pain a team is willing to take on, and how best and effective they can be with communication. Ideally, like they say, face-to-face is the best, and being co-located is ideal, but in an ever-evolving world with going virtual across time zones, it's different. I would just see if we could have more checkpoints along the way and ask the team what would work for them. Do they want to make exceptions, maybe meet late at night once a week or once a month to huddle, or sometimes way early? Just ask them and they might come up with some good answers. But yeah, open to what other people think as well. This is a tough one. Never easy.
All right, I don't hear
It's,
any.
well,
Go ahead.
it's Larry. Just rotating times has, so that we share the pain, has worked in other environments.
So by that you mean
For
like
some of the
some people come up early, stay late, or tell us more, Larry.
Well, what happens then if, let's say you're at 9 hours or some weird time zone thing. So the idea is that you would be equally inconvenienced. So one meeting happens at 9 a.m., but it's 6 p.m. for somebody, or it's 3 in the morning for somebody. But then in the next meeting, the time privileges those people who, the ones who had to wake up at 3, now it's in their time zone and somebody else has to meet or work gets done at midnight. So it's just a matter of recognizing that that's awkward and saying, as a team, we're just trying to share the discomfort so that no one is disadvantaged all the time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense to me. I like working, I really enjoy working with remote teams because I'm an early worker. I like starting at 5 o'clock. Like if I'm working with remote teams, I start at 5 in the morning, and it's great, because, it's really kind of, part of their day. And it's just my particular preference. But if you were to ask me to work late at night, I'd probably rather work at 4 a.m., but that's just Bob.
Some people probably love you, Bob. Some people probably hate you.
I like opening up the place. So you walk in the office and everything's dark. And as you walk down the halls, all the lights come on automatically. And I'm sure the company's not happy that I'm, making their electric bill go up. So can we say this one's done? You guys have some good questions here. All right. This one has 5 votes. And so this one is how to address a clash of cultures between Agile and Waterfall.
Bob loves answering this. But I'll
Thanks
take
a
a
lot.
first pass. I almost told you, didn't I? This remains to be at odds, and it's always coming up every once in a while. And I think every organization is different with the embedded culture over there. And some people come from a place of quick judgment, and some people come from a place of curiosity. And I would like to see if the people are willing to do an experiment or take a leap of faith or find opportunities where you can add or plant seeds and show where there's value. There are also a few different approaches that have been talked about. So either you can go top down, you can go bottom up, or you can go stealth, where you try to actually embed some flavor of agility without using any formal lingo or terminology. Google has done this, and there's a great video where they invited Ken Schwaber as well, talking about this and how things changed over there. But it's always a clash, or you're going to always reach some level of resistance with some pockets in an organization. And you also have to be a little unbiased and say, hey, maybe waterfall might be a better bet compared to some other aspects of it. I mean, I don't really like saying that in this day and age, but you have to stay a little neutral as well. So I'm throwing out more of Zen philosophy more than anything else. Bob, anything you'd like to share before we open it up?
Sure, I can share a real-time experience I had at a previous job. I was coaching a Scrum Master, and they thought Agile was cool. They wanted to give it a try, but the whole organization was set up as component teams. And so if you're familiar with the concept of feature team versus a component team means everybody works on a component. Like you have a team of UI developers, you have a team of middleware developers, you have a team of backend developers. So these are 3 separate teams. And that's typically how waterfall projects work, where the front end people will build their UI, the middleware people will build their middleware, and then the backend people will build their backend software, and then they kind of pull it all together and cross their fingers and hope everything works. All right. And that, in essence, when you have that kind of environment, you are forcing a lot of communication between teams, because basically the UI team has, they have a set objectives. They have to deliver something by a certain date. The middleware team has the same date. Now, you take that and you do it the Agile way. So when I was working with the Scrum Master, I said, well, can we get the waterfall organization to agree to do an experiment? And then basically, we talked about it, and I said, well, why don't we grab two UI developers, two middleware developers, and two backend developers, and put them on one team, and we'll call this our new Agile team. And a lot of discussions went back and forth again, because once when you're in the waterfall structure, the people that are managing these teams have been doing it for so long that they don't want to let go of that power. All right. So what I always encounter when you have these kinds of discussions is the managers give you the most resistance. It's not really the people on the team, it's more like the managers, because their job is threatened all of a sudden, because now you have one team. It's called Agile, right? It's an Agile team, it's an Agile Scrum team. And now when you talk about this team, you say, hey, wait a minute, it's self-managing. And now the manager goes, uh-oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do for a living if these waterfall people, these component team people's move to this Agile team? Well, to make the story really short, we actually did it. We did the experiment, and the results were amazing. The team was able to accomplish the work a lot more quickly, because again, they had all the skills on one team to deliver the end result. They didn't have to talk to different teams and do the coordination, do the scheduling. And by the way, that's what PMs, usually do. They'll put together their project plan and say, well, this team's going to finish this, and then this team's going to pick it up and do that, then they're going to pass it to this team. Now all of a sudden you have a team that self-manages itself, and they figure it all out, and then they deliver. So it was a really great success. And again, I'm sure there's times when you're going to get major pushback and you're just not even going to get that initial team. But the way to start is get one team in there. Like Nitin mentioned, you can do the stealth mode or the bottom up or the top down. But if you can actually come in with one team and do this experiment, you'll find that you'll start breaking down those barriers, and people will see the value of doing it this way. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments? Did what I say make sense?
Yes, Bob, absolutely. I've experienced it.
It's really fun. When it works, it's fun. But sometimes, you just have to, just be ready to get your bruises.
Yeah, you have to break through the resistance.
Yep.
Yeah, Bob, I too have experienced it, and I'm experiencing it again right now with trying to get a new team to embrace the ceremonies. So it's quite a task. But like you said, you get one of them going, then they see the proof, and then the other ones will follow.
And I could talk about this the whole time, and I don't want to. Normally when you do a thing like this, we time box it, and I think we've been doing it quickly enough, but Nitin's going to have to probably time box me and say, Bob, you're done. What ended up happening was there was a shortage of UI developers. And so the Scrum Master goes, what do I do now? There's no UI developers. I say, well, ask the team. Does anybody on the team want to be a UI developer? And guess what? People volunteered. They were kind of stuck in their component, but they said, I want to expand my skills. So now you have the team members growing their skills. So now instead of just having a component developer, you have a full feature developer where they can do the UI, the middleware, and the back end. And that's what keeps people employed. They not really employed, wanting to stay working for the company because they're learning. And you're creating that really great environment where they can actually get mastery and they can grow their skills. And so it's really, when it works, it's great. So is it okay if we move this to done?
Bob, you're done.
Thanks, Nitin.
Gee, what about me? Nobody asked me. I had a story too, but let's keep going.
Okay, I don't, this is a good topic. We can go back.
No, that's okay. I was mesmerized by what you said. I forgot.
Okay, I'll let you have this one then. Okay. As a Scrum Master, what do you feel is the most challenging thing to overcome when working with a new team?
Wow, that's loaded there as well. I think we're getting back into, the cultural element of it, how receptive people are to what it is you bring, whether they have seen any value to this, or, it's just just another scrummy guy. We've seen this before, done that, what else to do? I think for me personally was just getting people into a mindset or taking a leap of faith, and trying experiments, and also trying to create a safety net saying, hey, if we don't have things go as we planned them to go or as intended, that's okay. We can pivot and we can retrospect and move forward. Already said a lot, but depends on the organization, the situation, the team. Scrum Master is going to have a lot of challenges. The more you evolve, the more teams you worked with in different domains, it can be messy. So Bob, tell us about your scars.
Okay.
You also look at the chat.
I like this question, whoever wrote it, because it really depends on the team. It's always, the typical MBA answer, it depends. But sharing some experiences, what I find is a lot of times when a new team is formed, for some reason, they feel you have to give them permission because they feel like, they might have come from an environment where they're being told what to do. And so now they're on this self-managing team. And that whole concept of self-managing, it could be a little bit scary for people who are used to being told by a manager, you do this, and then they do it, they deliver. If things go wrong, it wasn't their fault. They delivered it, But now you have a team that you're saying, I'm going to volunteer for this. I'm going to deliver it. All right. It's not the manager telling them what to do. It's the employees. So it's kind of a switch in mindset. And that's the whole idea of getting the team to embrace the agile mindset. And depending on the type of team that you have and the kind of risks that you might have, as far as when you do deployments, it could take a little bit longer to get them through that. And what I do a lot is I really focus on the agile values and the agile principles and lean, and getting people to really embrace those ideas and a way of working and a way of communicating with your stakeholders. So it's really getting that shift of mindset that at least that's been the most challenging to me. How about anybody else on the call?
So this is Seth. One of the challenges I've had is when you have a developer or someone on the team who just does not want to change. They've been doing it for so many years and they just don't want to change. So I would love to hear, someone's experience, how you get them to at least marginally change a little bit to this new way of the world working.
You win over everybody else around them.
Yeah.
Slowly. And it becomes a little conscious sometimes, like, whoa, everybody else is doing it. And I'm the last guy on the boat who's not. So do I continue the way that I do, or, stick out a little bit? And that doesn't have to be threatening. It can also just be revealing in itself, And I don't know if you heard of the ratio 5:1. It takes 5 times the effort to bring about positivity or something with change compared to just that one comment of negativity or something that can take you down. So there's so much more that you have to do to win over such a person, right? And what could also happen is, this has happened to me personally, is we had one person who was just really struggling, and this is a developer on the team, and they realized that this is not the best fit for them. But there was another opportunity with another team that they could move on to, and somehow there was a better fit, and they felt comfortable there, or a little bit more comfortable. But this is just what comes to my mind right away, Seth. Just one example, but I'm sure others can also say and contribute more.
I see Al raised his hand.
Yeah, I just like to add here. I have been to this kind of situation in the past, and what I learn is the developer probably would be happy in the waterfall environment because they can really see the scope of the work, and probably they can get the more job safety if they are really kind of a temporary workers. So they can really see from that, okay, this particular engagement will last for 6 months or so. But when they've been agile, where no things are being given to them, and chance they could have the fear in the mind that project could end only if the business value is realized before the time. So that was the main fear.
Yeah, I could add to that a little bit, where I had that experience where I had some, really skilled backend developers. They didn't want nothing to do with this being agile. And through the retrospective process, I kept on asking, like, what's causing this feeling? Like why are you so against this? And then it finally came out, and it was so simple, but it took time to have him say it. It was, they were worried about being blamed. Like, they were worried if they volunteer for something to deliver at the end of the sprint and they missed it, they'd get blamed. All right. And so as agilists, you have to really embrace that mindset where you want them to volunteer for more than they think they can do, because you want them to stretch, right? So what I did is I had a conversation with the product owner. I said, hey, product owner, the team's worried if they don't get something done, they're going to get blamed. So the product owner had a discussion with the team, and guess what? That whole thing went away. It was just having that one discussion and really trying to figure out why that person or people are so against it. And it sometimes, you just have to ask. And anybody else have any thoughts?
Just to supplement what was also said earlier, I think visibility is interesting. If your developer is feeling, hey, I have to check what more is out there, I'm hoping you have a good product owner or even a scrum master who can reflect the product backlog, given some metrics, and hey, we're going to be busy for a couple of sprints. And, and that could relate to quarters or so on, because I bet you even upper management is asking that same question, right? And if you can show something that's robust and healthy, then that might allay some of the fears. But certainly people are thinking ahead, particularly if you're an IT contractor, amongst other things. So just a few supplementary words.
Anyone else? Going to done. All right, the next one on the list is the difference between Agile coach and Scrum Master. That's a very interesting one.
Bob and I actually had a full session on this, both in person as well as virtual. This is loaded.
Yes, it is. We could actually do a full session on this, is what Nitin's saying. So why don't you want to take a first pass?
Sure. I would certainly look at the realm of what it means to be an agile coach by someone who has the capability to teach, mentor, coach professionally, and facilitate, and understand those 4 core competencies and be able to do a dance amongst those. Scrum Masters certainly can do those as well. But agile coaches seem to be maybe one level up, and they're focusing more on the coaching aspect of it. They don't necessarily need to be rolling up their sleeves on a day-to-day basis, getting down into teams and what they're doing. We could possibly do a scenario-based example if time permits, but what do you think, Bob? What else could we add here?
Why don't you do that scenario-based? I thought that was a great example. Like if something came up during the daily scrum.
Okay, so let's say I'm a product owner and Bob is a scrum master, and I go to Bob and say, hey, scrum master, my scrum team is telling me they're not going to get all the work done at the end of the sprint. What should we do? So Bob could take 4 stances, right? And this is the dance that I call it. He could teach, mentor, coach, or facilitate. So Bob, let's see how you would answer based on of those. Do you have a preference, depending on the stance you would take?
Well, for that particular question, I would probably do a teaching stance, only because that's kind of pointing out to me that the product owner may not really understand how, how it works with Scrum, and how the team, not always is going to deliver 100%. The other way to approach it as a coach is I would ask, like, what's often referred to as a powerful question. And then you could ask a question, well, what would you like to see? And then have the product owner actually answer it. And then if I was to take a mentor stance, you can continue, Nitin.
Sure, all great. So mentoring is just about bringing your own experience, but it may or may not serve the immediate or the team right away, or if at all. So Bob might say, you know what, I've seen this before at my other job as well, and what they tried was blah, 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 but again, this may or may not work. But let's have a conversation. Let's have a deep dive amongst that. Right? And the next stance is that of a facilitator. And Bob may say, well, thank you for bringing that concern to me. Let me see if I can get us all on a call and see what's going on. Let me facilitate that discussion or dialogue directly between the members of the dev team and the product owner. Right? So this is very subtle. We do have answers, but every time a Scrum Master is answering, they're most likely doing a dance between these 4 realms, which, depending on their level of awareness and training, they may or may not be aware of it. Agile coaches typically are very attuned to this and have to figure out the dance over here. So that's just a little bit on what a Scrum Master might bring versus coaching. And we can open up to others as well, depending on what have they seen in their Scrum Masters or coaches in their organizations or the market.
Can I say the Scrum Master is a team coach or team level coach, and the agile coach probably responsible for the business agility?
That is one dimension of it. Now, agile coaches, and by the way, this is evolving in the industry. You do have team-based coaches and you have enterprise-based coaches. So even the agile coaches can fit in those realms, depending on things. Besides business agility, you have engineering agility as well. And you might have someone with better engineering skill sets, knowledge, and know-how there as well. Agile coaches can also bring in other flavors of agility into an organization, right? So Scrum Master is typically more attuned or accustomed to working in the environment of Scrum, but an Agile coach might say, hey, this isn't the best for Scrum, don't do it. Or hey, try Kanban instead, that's better suited. Or hey, do a bit of Kanban and then we'll determine whether we can go to Scrum in, let's say, 3 months.
And also to add on to what Nitin says, or has said, it's really the experience of the Scrum Master. Like if you hire somebody that just got their CSM, they're not going to be able to coach. They're just going to barely be able to facilitate the Scrum events. So it's really looking at the experience of the individual, because like I started as a Scrum Master, but as my skills evolved, I started teaching. All right. And then after I was teaching, then people would say, hey, could you help me with this? So then I kind of started mentoring. And then once I started doing all 3, then I said, what's this thing called coaching? And that's when I got very involved with IC Agile and learned coaching skills. And so it's like an evolution of a Scrum Master, because when a Scrum Master, when they first start, is a facilitator. And that's when it would be great if you had a coach to help that Scrum Master grow those skills so they can become better at their craft. And so it's really, bottom line, it's really the experience of the Scrum Master, whether or not they can actually be that coach.
So Bob, it's Larry, I think you've kind of taken me 2 directions. One is the distinction between lowercase c coaching the activity and big capital C coach the role, job title. The other one is, I think if you use that analogy of teach them to fish versus give them one, that the Scrum Master has more pressure at a tactical level to kind of have that mix, where an Agile coach, particularly at an enterprise level, is really all about teaching people to fish. And that's a much greater percentage of their work and how their effectiveness is measured. So a different perspective, maybe.
I think the key here is that the Agile coach is more of an advisor, an advisory type skills on how to improve. Now, granted, an Agile coach may come in temporarily be a Scrum Master for a number of weeks or sessions just from a temporary basis. But I think really the Agile coach is more that advisor and really how do you tune the engine. So versus the Scrum Master is managing those teams. But
You guys are spot on, and the only thing I didn't like what you said, the Scrum Master does not manage. they help. The minute you say the Scrum Master is the manager, everybody looks at the Scrum Master as the manager, and that's the last thing you want, a self-managing.
I've been beaten by my organization. I'm sorry, you're right.
So and a lot of times they want to make that Scrum Master the PM. It happens all the time. It's just they go for the comfort things. And what you guys described is exactly what a coach is. And also, if you think about it, a coach is not part of the team. If you look at the Scrum guy, there's only a Scrum Master, a product owner, and development. That's it. So a coach kind of sits outside the team, and so they don't really have as much skin in the game. Yeah, they have a lot of skin in the game, but it's the team that's doing the work. Any other questions about this one? All right, what is most useful, Kanban versus Scrum?
Board,
Board.
not common.
Well,
All Scrum says, yeah. I was looking at that carefully. I said, wait. If it's Kanban versus Scrum, that's pretty broad. But if it's Kanban versus Scrum board, oh, that's a quick answer. All Scrum says is visualize the work. It doesn't say how. So Scrum can borrow from Kanban or other ways to get a board, such as what we're using right now, right? And what's most useful is what makes sense for the team. I have worked with Scrum teams that have not used a Kanban board. They've used Microsoft SharePoint with a list type view with all sorts of metadata, and that has worked for them really well. Kanban is certainly about the optimization of flow, and a very strong component of that is the visualization. So if you can get that, nothing like it.
So then I'm going to say, well, what are your preference? Because you've managed enough teams to know that, hey, I like to take my Kanban as my initial stance or Scrum as my initial stance, as far as how you visualize your information.
I like swim lanes, so I do lean on Kanban personally. So I would start off with, what's in the backlog, it's defined, and in progress, blocked, and done. And I would have exit agreements to them, as in describing what it means when a card or a requirement or a user story or product backlog item is there, and see how best to move it. Kanban boards or visualizations are actually fun in person. I got blue painter's tape on a wall where I knew a team was co-located, whipped it up very quickly, used color-coded cards, and things that were blocked, I kind of put sideways, and they had to kind of shift their head a little bit on the left to read what was on the board. And that was also subtle. Say, yeah, we've got a blocker here as an indicator as well. So to answer your question, Seth, I prefer Kanban in the visualization as well. And if I were to be starting up with new teams, I would certainly check if Kanban would work first, because it's lighter. People are not as overwhelmed with certain terminology, and people get it, right? Hey, just how do you move from one place to another?
I completely agree with you. You tend to use teams, and I start with Kanban. I usually eventually evolve to a Scrum board, especially within Jira, but that's just me.
Yep, same thing. That sounds very familiar.
And if you're actually following Kanban, some organization will actually add things to Kanban. It might, like Scrum's great. It has those events that are checkpoints. Well, you can do the same thing with Kanban too, because you can have those checkpoints, and, more formalize it. So that way, people get a better idea of what's going on and stuff like that. So they're both great practices for doing Agile. And so with that, we have 4 minutes left. So we're going to say this one's done. And I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And this is, we've probably shared this with you, so you probably know what this is. It's often known as the Fist of Five. And what you could do if we were sitting in the same room, we could actually do it as it was progressing. Like when I, was asking if everybody was okay, with how things were going, I could have said, let's go with Fist of Five. Is this meeting your needs? I'd say, well, put up one finger if it's not, put up 5 if it's great, or if it's somewhere in between, put those fingers up. And then I go 1, 2, 3, show, and then people would put their hands up. And if everything's great, you'd see 5s. If everything was not so great, you'd see 1s. Then you could take a step back and say, okay, what can we change? We still have a half hour left of this meeting. What should we do differently to meet your needs? And don't get too accurate about it. Just do a glance at what the hands are and just average it in your mind. Don't say there's 10 people, 3 people are 5, 2 people are 1. Don't do any of that. It's just a real quick way to get feedback. And finally, I'd like to say thank you for your time, and we're going to stop the recording.